said we were doing like 2, and then we went up to 3, and then it went to 4. And then it went up to 4.5. And then it went down all the way to 2.5.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of a good thing.
Okay, anytime.
Okay.
Just warn me before you release,
I will.
please.
Gotta get his feet out of the back. Okay, I'm gonna get ready.
Okay.
I don't know how quickly it's gonna go my finger.
Just,
Slow mo that.
just don't look at me when you release it.
Nope, I was looking at him.
Ah, you looked at me too.
I did? Oh, I didn't realize
No
that.
big deal. Bob, if you haven't already, can you get a tight shot of the bird? That's what I've been doing, off and on, yeah.
All right.
So just hang on to him for a little bit. That's perfect. Oh, yeah, there we go. Now we get to see. Quiet it down. Susan, is there any way you can just have your hand, I can shoot real tight and you just let it go? Or you tell me.
I can check.
You tell me. Can you let him go from there? Or?
Trying, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna be,
Oh.
there he goes. All right.
Oh, one different way.
Nice.
It's rather unpredictable. Now,
But wait until he has the bird in hand. I think it'd be more. Oh, and Susan, when you talk, if you be careful not to hit the bench, because
Okay.
that sound's going to come over.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't wanna make you nervous about.
Sure.
We hear, Mike hears everything, unfortunately. Okay. Your chance. I'm rolling.
okay.
Alright, and if you could just tell us the name of the bird and how to spell it and what's special about it.
Sure. Here we have a white-breasted nuthatch. That's W-H-I-T-E, breasted, B-R-E-A-S-T-E-D,
And talk to
nuthatch.
Courtney there.
Nuthatch is spelled, is all one word, N-U-T-A-T-C-H. They get their name from the fact that they whack on seeds. They hack with their bill, and that is turned into hatch. So white-breasted for the white breast, and nuthatch from the way that it feeds. These guys are local. They don't migrate. They're here year-round. Again, a feeder bird. They may feed on on suet or on seeds at your feeder, but they are very different in that they climb around on the bark of trees. They don't walk on the ground. They climb around looking for seeds in cones and in the bark of trees. Insects. They feed on insects too. So they are pretty special and very well adapted birds for what they do.
You could hold him just a little bit and have him turning towards me a little bit. Well, back down where you were, please. I need to see the bird before you do anything, if you could. Yeah, thank you. I think you had it more in front of you. I need to see the bird without you doing anything, if possible, Susan. I know we don't want to traumatize it. Sorry, because we can't really see it. There we go. There we go. Just hold that, please. Okay. Do your thing.
Okay. Okay.
You ready to release? Hang on. Okay. Good.
Yep.
You can wear it too, whatever you want.
We're 6 feet apart.
Okay, Courtney. Here we go.
Okay, if you'll just repeat the name of the birds and then talk about their first year of life.
Yes. The white-breasted nuthatch that we just released is a juvenile bird. That means it hatched somewhere here in the area this spring and has been flying around, probably still with its parents, for the last several months. These birds are cavity nesters, and so they are able to start nesting sooner when it's colder than things like robins that build nests that are open cup nests. But even so, they stay with their parents for the first almost year of their lives, gaining experience and being protected by them. We have a number of species like this in the sandhills, but white-breasteds, I think, are the most handsome of those birds. What else did you want?
How is it dangerous for the species? Were you going into that?
Oh, the species, yes. Young birds, whether they are migrants like warblers and flycatchers and vireos, or things like chickadees and titmice that don't migrate, the first year is very hazardous. About 50% of our local birds that breed here don't make it to their first birthday. For birds that are long-distance migrants, we think it's as much as 90% of those young birds don't make it through the first year. But if they do make it through the first year and have that experience, then they will live, like our nuthatch or our titmouse will live for 3 or 4 years, most likely.
Yeah, would you tell Courtney what some of the factors are that cause them to die in the
Yes.
first year?
Yeah. There are many things that may cause mortality for these birds. Some is just lack of experience, and for some birds they may have a harder time finding food or keeping safe from predators. Predators being everything from bird hawks to, unfortunately, cats can catch and kill these birds. But there are also other hazards. The weather is something that can be hazardous for these birds if they get caught in prolonged wet periods. Also, things like cell towers and windows are responsible for mortality of these birds as well. There are bird diseases that they can catch that can be fatal as well. So there are lots of things out there that can cause trouble for them.
Thank you.
Okay, we're no longer here, just do your thing. Lucio's a bunch of different stuff. Thanks.
All we need to do is wait. This could be a young female, is my guess. The head is so gray, it's totally gray. Oh, there's a woodpecker. You're probably going to need to help them. It sounds like a woodpecker, doesn't it? Something very, very noisy. Let's go. I'm gonna let her go.
We are rolling.
Okay, we are getting ready to band a chipping sparrow, which is our local small sparrow that is very common in the pine forest. It is another bird that you might see at your feeder because they really do like small seeds. Striped brown and white. This is a very young bird. It doesn't have the rusty cap that an adult would have. This is a very young bird. It has not been out and about very long at all. Chipping sparrows have as many as 3 broods in the summertime here in North Carolina. So I've just put the numbered band on the bird's right leg because it's the leg that's closest to me. Just crimped it around the ankle so that it will move, but it can't come down over the foot. It's not going to be at all hazardous for this bird. But we're now hoping that that band's going to be on there and it will identify this individual for the rest of its life, which probably going to be 3 or 4 years. It's a good lifespan for a chipping sparrow. Got the band on. The next thing I'm going to do is measure the bird's wing, and we do this from the bend of the wing to the end of the feathers on the outside of the wing. And here it looks like it's about 66 millimeters. The next thing I will do is blow on the bird to look for any new feathers that might be coming in. We also do this to look for fat on migrating birds. This not being a migrant, I don't expect to see fat. Nope. Birds are generally not fat unless they are in migratory mode. So no fat, no feathers coming in. So unfortunately, chipping sparrows all look the same. Males and females are identical, so we can't tell whether this is a boy or a girl. Until next spring, when it might show signs of being in breeding condition, then we would be able to sex it. I'm going to look at the wing now for signs of age. I'm going to pair this with my notes on the streakiness of the head, the lack of a cap. See the feathers on the wing are characteristic of a young bird. They're very rounded, very tapered. And also the wing feathers are nice and fresh because this bird's not been using them for very, very long, so there's no fraying or nicks or chips on the end of those feathers yet. And
Do the wings again, if you would, please.
sure.
Just talk. You can talk.
So
or
we're
yeah.
just
Did you?
putting the wing on the ruler here and looking at where that last wing feather extends on our ruler. So 66 millimeters for this bird. The last thing that we will do is we will weigh it. So back in the bag it goes. Weigh the bird and the bag. Good. 24 minus 11 is 13 grams. And we are now finished processing this little guy or gal.
If you can hold him there so we can see him, please. There you go. Just keep holding him.
A few of those rusty feathers on the head coming in, but Mostly just streaked brown.
Could you hold him one more time and then spread his wings out like you were looking at him before, and then that's it. Lower it down to where you had it before, please. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Is that where you're going to be?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. You can look at the wings. Good. Keep it in the same area if you can.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead and do it again. Good. And do you want to release him?
Yep.
Anytime.
Okay. So here we go.
Check.
This is a man. Oh, this is just another stinking titmouse.
Let's get it.
Where's the towhee? Hey, Sam, did the towhee get away? Son of a gun. So disappointed. So it's just another silly titmouse. Yes. I don't think either of us are happy, buddy.
You want to move the light?
Okay. Yes, Tom. I think where she's going to go. Just get it on her face. No, I mean, it can be there. Just need to get it on her.
Oh, on her, okay. Could you hold that scale up a little bit longer so Bob could actually have time to, you want me to change the light, get good,
Hang on, hang on, hang
get
on.
close up of the weight?
Hang on. Can you just lift up the bag and then let it weigh, let it move, and hold it as steady as you can? You do it again.
Bird, stop moving in there.
One more time if you can. Okay, good. Thanks.
So, I'm just curious,
And very, very loud. This one's a juvenile for sure.
Now we can talk about it.
So these fancy little bracelets that we're putting on the birds today are aluminum bands that are engraved with a number combination. And that number combination for birds in North America is going to be a 9-digit number. There are 4 numbers in the prefix and 5 numbers in the suffix. And so each band, whether it's a large band for a hawk or an owl, or a small band for a warbler, they're all going to have the same number of digits, but they are all going to be unique. And the sizes, there are about a dozen sizes of bird bands that we use on different sized individuals. And we have this gadget right here that we use to measure a bird's leg if we're not sure what size band to use. They're issued in chronological order from the Bird Banding Laboratories stock. They're made by a couple different companies that issue them to the lab, and then the lab issues them to then upload the files to them. Hopefully it's going to be web-based soon and be a lot less cumbersome than what we're doing now. When I first started bird banding, it was all, you submitted your records by hand on paper. They've gone through a couple iterations. Let me do that again.
Go ahead and just rotate it and hold it on the number. If you can get your finger away from the number, that'd be great. It's tough. Rotate it so we can see it. Good. Keep rotating. Keep on rotating if you can. Okay. Good. Thank you.
You
Go
set
ahead.
on that spot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where is, oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay.
Wait a little bit, little bit, little bit. Okay, take him out.
The back. Okay.
And walk away.
Good.
Good. Yay. Forward a little bit, please. Thank you. Okay, you can take it off. Here we go. I'm recording. And put it on. Give me one more. And do it a little bit quicker. Ready? Oh, stand back where you were. Stand back where you were. I'm sorry.
Here.
Yeah, you can face this way.
Okay.
There you go. And go. Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
Special winter birds that are here this year that don't always come into North Carolina. They don't need to. They aren't looking very far from home for food. But they eventually will start using the feeders here. I was just hoping that by today some of them would be, but they don't seem to be.
So this is further south than their usual
We are
range?
very much like
And why do you think weather changes or?
You know, some of these, even our longleaf, some years, you know, put out more cones than other years.
Seems like, I mean, at least in the mountain area.
Read about, but you know, you get up north up into Canada, and you know, their weather fluctuates, and apparently they didn't have the same amount of rain we did, or there are some birds, you know, that migrate, things that leave here and go to the tropics in the winter are not equipped to handle really cold, prolonged temperatures. But then it's all the insects, because we have tiny insects all winter. and this is kind of odd, but we have these small birds, kinglets were here in the trees. I was hoping to do that monitoring. It's a long story, but I have not been involved with banding of the woodpeckers. I've been involved with reciting them on the park. Birds that are related will have the same, color, clan combo, color-wise. So it means that, they don't need to recapture to follow those birds and read the combos, but that's part of what biologists here that work with them do, in addition to banding the babies in the spring.
So are there any longleaf pines that produce a...
This is all longleaf. Yeah, most of what's around you right now is longleaf. By the road that's got white on it. See that tree that's got all that white? That's sap.
Is that a red coffee?
Yeah, that was the nest tree. Yeah, that was the nest tree that's along the ridge. There are several of them. On the park right now, we have, I think, 6 family groups now at the moment.
But that's painted white, right?
No, the birds have done that. The birds have done that. You'll see the woodpecker trees, whether they're active or not, have a white painted band around them, but that is all from sap running down the park.
You're rolling.
Okay, for starters, can you just say your full name, how you spell it, and then your title?
Just put your hands by your side because it looks like you
Sure.
have no arms. Okay.
Susan Campbell, that's SUSANCAMPBELL, and I am a wildlife ecologist, and also here at Weymouth Woods I am a seasonal naturalist.
And you're employed by North Carolina State Parks?
Yes, among other people, yes.
Okay. So to start off, can you just tell me what bird banding is?
Sure, bird banding is the study of birds through the use of numbered leg bands that allow us to follow the birds once the band is placed on their leg over space and time.
And Susan, if you would look right
It's right,
across
okay.
toward the camera.
Let's do it again and see if it's stop. The first question again, please.
Okay. So can you just explain to me what bird banding is?
Bird banding is the study of birds using numbered leg bands. Once the band is applied, we can then hopefully follow that bird through space and time.
All right, gotta stop again. All right, let's do it again, Courtney.
Okay. What is bird banding?
Bird banding is the study of birds using numbered leg bands. Once we apply the bands to the bird's leg, we then hope we can follow them through space and time.
Is that what you really want to say?
Well,
You can do it again.
bird banding is the study of birds using numbered leg bands. Once we apply the band, then we hope we can follow the bird through space and time.
You got it, Courtney.
Okay. So what is the significance of bird banding?
Bird banding allows us to learn about everything from how long birds live to how large of a home range they have, and also where they go when they migrate. So it gives us the ability to track birds and learn about everything from individual species to groups of birds, and to be able to follow them from here in the United States down to where they winter during migration.
Okay. How did you get introduced to bird banding?
I got introduced to bird banding as an offshoot of my interest in birds. Probably the first bird banding I remember was going and watching piping plovers in Cape May, New Jersey that had been banded. Piping plovers are a shorebird that's been endangered for some time, and so they've been very heavily studied. And I would watch those birds and be able to tell individuals, because not only did they have a metal leg band, but they had plastic leg bands, so we could tell who was who just by looking at the color combination on their legs. And I thought that was really pretty interesting and pretty powerful information to be able to get from the birds. When I got to North Carolina, I was very quickly introduced to staff of the Museum of Natural Sciences, and they have been doing bird banding as part of what they do and their research for many years. And at the same time, I was also working with other graduate students that were doing bird banding studies. I was a volunteer. And so when I got here to North Carolina is when I really got interested and started getting some experience. But it wasn't until 1998 that I received my training in bird banding. And then as soon as my training was complete, I started banding birds, and that was then, and here I am. And I feel like I have so much more to learn from birds and bird banding, but it's been a wonderful experience, and I hope I can keep doing it for another 20 or 30 years.
All right. What role does bird banding play into the environment?
I gotta think about this for a minute.
And if you started out, say bird banding, and then say,
Yes.
because we're not going to hear, what's your name again? Courtney. And just make sure you're looking at her when you start. But
Yes.
Take your time.
I'm
Take your
just
time. No
I'm just
hurry.
thinking about
Yeah,
how
think about
best
it.
to put this. Bird banding is a very important tool for conservationists. First of all, it allows us to learn or to monitor birds, and yeah, this is a hard question to answer succinctly.
Maybe,
Just
maybe
the-
Courtney, you can kind of break your question up into smaller
Yeah,
parts.
yeah.
Okay.
The objective of,
Bird banding.
Yeah.
kind of face her if you turn your body. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, we can center in. So, how has the bird population at Weymouth Woods? Have you noticed a change and an effect in it after you began bird banding here?
Bird banding at Weymouth Woods has been going on now for over 20 years. And we have seen some changes in the bird populations here. Most notably, we have recorded a decrease in migrants coming through the park. In terms of numbers of individuals, we don't see as many migrants coming through. And I would also say that the diversity of migrant species coming through in spring and fall has dropped.
Okay. Why do you think that's happening to the species?
There are many reasons that we may be seeing this decrease, and it is rather complicated, and I'm not sure we'll ever really know exactly what the most critical factors are that are driving the decrease. But we know that habitat loss worldwide is a problem for birds. Not only do they have less habitat, but they also are now facing food shortages in places. Our insectivorous birds are having a harder time finding bugs, whether it's here in North Carolina or it's down in the Amazon. Insects are on the decline. And for insectivorous birds, this is a really big problem. Not only during migration, certainly during the breeding season when they're looking for thousands of insects to feed their young. It is really one of the most significant reasons for population declines, and also lack of a decline in species diversity that we see worldwide.
Stop.
This area. And then also, I would ask you, and some birds that make this their home, has there been a change in the population there? And if so, what do you see?
We're rolling. Come over a little bit. Thank you. Perfect.
Can you tell me again how the insect decline has been affecting the bird population of migrant birds?
Insect declines are affecting birds worldwide. Most of the birds that you will find anywhere you go are insect eaters. And as a result of chemical usage on the landscape, we are seeing very, very broad scale declines in insects. And for these birds, it means a decrease in energy for themselves. It is a problem during the breeding season if they can't find enough to feed their young as well as themselves. And then certainly when it comes time to migrate and they need to stoke up that energy to migrate, they don't have enough of the fuel that's necessary to get them where they're going.
How about the birds that don't migrate, that stay here full time? Have you noticed any changes within the last 20 years of the habitat, climate change, insects?
Yes, we're noticing local changes as well. Habitat decline is one of those, so that we're seeing fewer of some species on the landscape as a result of, say, the decrease in woodlands that we have. But then on the other hand, we're also seeing increases in other birds that are more open country birds. Things like bluebirds are actually increasing. But locally, breeding productivity for our non-migrants is also certainly affected by the fact that here in the area, there aren't as many insects as there used to be.
Okay. Have you noticed that climate change has had any effect on migrant birds or birds that stay in the area full time?
I personally have not documented any changes as a result of climate change. It's a very hard thing to pin down that there's actually something that's changing with our birds that is attributable to climate change. Certainly here at Weymouth Woods, we haven't detected anything along those lines. But it may be, that it is affecting our birds. Warmer winters mean that
You're hitting it right
Okay.
there, because I think that is climate change.
Yes.
But so you can
Yeah.
you can speak to that.
So, warmer winters mean that more of our local birds will make it through to the springtime because they don't have to use as much in the way of resources to keep warm. So definitely there could be some very positive things about climate change with our birds. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for local bird watchers, bird enthusiasts on how to get involved in bird banding?
Yeah, it's a great thing for people to do. It's something that everyone from children to retired folks can get involved with. And those of us who are bird banding are always looking for volunteers. So one way to get involved is to contact me, and I can work with an interested individual if they're in the area where I'm working to assist me, or I can hook them up with people that are bird banding in their part of North Carolina. It's something that you can't go to school to learn. It's something you basically come out and you work with an experienced bander as an apprentice to learn how to bird band and learn the birds and learn all the skills that you need to know to be a bird bander.
Stop again. As the sun went away? Oh, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay. What is your favorite thing about bird banding?
My favorite thing about bird banding is seeing birds that already have bands, visiting with my feathered friends that I haven't seen in a while. Catching or recatching banded birds is why we do what we do as bird banders, to see the same individuals over time. And so it's always a special thrill when I walk up to the net and I notice that that little bird has a bracelet on it. It's even more exciting when I realize that that's a bird that was banded by somebody else, and that it's come many, many miles and has ended up here for me to see and to learn a little bit more about. So foreign recaptures are even more exciting than local recaptures.
I'm out of questions.
Favorite color, favorite movie?
What is your favorite?
Affiliated.
What is your favorite type of bird to capture?
Well, my favorite type of bird to capture is the ones that I specialize in, and that's the hummingbirds. They are special, very highly adapted little birds, and they are so feisty and so amazing for such small creatures that they can do what they do, and that they travel thousands of miles every year from up here in North Carolina down to their wintering grounds. And I'm also lucky enough to band them, to work with them in the wintertime. That's probably the most fun part of my hummingbird research, is to be able to work with winter hummingbirds, which we have here in North Carolina.
What got you interested in hummingbirds to begin with?
I got interested in hummingbirds because when I arrived in North Carolina, the idea that we had hummingbirds here in the wintertime was something that we weren't sure about. And so I was exposed to the idea that there were hummingbirds here in the winter through my work at the Museum of Natural Sciences. And working with John Gerwin, who knew something about hummingbirds and had communications with people that had hummingbirds in North Carolina in the wintertime, was a real fascination to me. How these little birds could be here and spend the winter, the whole winter here in North Carolina, was something that was almost unfathomable in the beginning. But now we know they're here, and there are quite a few of them.
When did you come to North Carolina?
I came to North Carolina in 1989, and then once I got here, started learning about the birds of North Carolina when I entered graduate school, and spent a lot of time traveling around the state, looking at birds, working with birds, helping with bird projects. It's been a wonderful place to be, because North Carolina has an incredibly diverse bird fauna. And so there's always something interesting to see. Every season, places to go and interesting birds to see all over the state.
August, tell us what the most interesting finding you've had today.
Okay, what has been the most interesting finding that you found today?
Interesting. Today or to date?
Both.
Which one? Oh, okay.
Turn it a little bit towards.
Okay.
Yeah, there you
Well, why
go.
don't you start with today? Since
Today.
Yeah.
And look at her when you
Today-
start talking. Here we go. Anytime.
Okay. Findings today. With bird banding, oftentimes it's not what you find on a particular day that's significant. It's putting the days together. And when you look at patterns over a week, a month, a year, that's when it becomes interesting. All those little pieces have to be there to be able to paint that picture, because any one day of bird banding is usually not as informative as doing it over and over again. That's why our long-term banding project here at Weymouth has so much value, because we've been able to band in the same places for many years to be able to paint a very big picture of the birds that live here at Weymouth and the birds that come through the park through our activities.
Okay, and what has been your most interesting finding at Weymouth within your time working here?
Here at Weymouth Woods, we have a very rare thrush that comes through in the fall, a cousin of an American robin called the Bicknell's thrush. It comes through the park in the fall, about the second week of October. We've intercepted a few of these birds, and they are a species of bird that you can only identify if you have one in your hand. It's not one that you can, even with very good binoculars, identify at a distance. Bicknell's thrush are not at all common. They breed up high in New England and into Canada, and they are a species we don't know a lot about during migration or during the wintertime. So it's been very exciting for us to catch Bicknell's thrush here at the park. Unless we had our nets up and actually physically intercepted them, we would not even know they were here, because they keep themselves hidden in the vegetation. So the only way to really know that they're here is to be out mist netting at the right time of the year and be able to catch them. And it's always been an exciting day when we've caught a bicknail thrush.
Can you spell the first name?
Yeah, Bicknell''S. They're very similar in appearance, extremely similar in appearance to gray-cheeked thrushes, which are also a northern thrush, but more numerous.
If you had end of your questions, then say, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about, or a question you'd like me to ask you?
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
One thing that I get asked a lot these days during programs that I give or by the general public that I come in contact with is, what can I do for the birds? Since we know that a lot of these birds are having a hard time right now, what can we do? Because we love birds, what is it that we can do to make a difference? And quite honestly, there are two things that people can do, even on their small piece of property, even if it's only a 1/4 acre or smaller, is plant native plants. Either enhance the vegetation or restore the vegetation using native plants that will support the native insects that these birds so desperately need. The second thing is to reduce the amount of chemicals that you use on your property. That's either pesticides or herbicides, because these chemicals do have, additively, all of us combined, using these products are inadvertently releasing a lot of toxins into the environment that are affecting the insects that the birds need to eat.
We need to do it again. Finally, as the light goes away. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry, my mind is everywhere. So what can collectively people do for the birds?
It's a very good question. Oh, I guess I can't say that. Things that people can do.
Start again.
Okay.
Just look at right here. Go ahead.
There are things people can do to help our birds. This is a time when some populations need a good bit of help. And one of the things that people can do is to plant native vegetation or replace non-native vegetation with native vegetation that will then support the insects that our birds need to feed on. The other thing that people can do is that they can be very judicious in using chemicals on the landscape. Both pesticides and herbicides can have a very detrimental effect on the insect fauna in an area. And so using as little chemical as possible will hopefully allow insect populations to rebound so that there's plenty for our birds and the other creatures in the ecosystem to eat as a result.
I'm concerned with the word judicious.
Okay.
Because, you know, we're having to deal with elementary people up, you know
Right,
what I mean,
that's
kind
too,
of thing.
yeah.
But what you're saying is great.
Yeah.
We could just less chemical, whatever you
Yes,
want to say.
okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Why don't you re-ask it, Courtney, and then you can get to the the ones that were especially
Okay.
bad.
So do you want to do the entire question or just the pesticide part?
The
Yeah.
chemical part.
Okay. So what can people do related to using chemicals, pesticides, herbicides in their home to help the bird population?
The birds can be helped if people will use less chemical, and by that I mean pesticides or herbicides on their properties. Hopefully, using less in the way of chemicals will allow the native insects to rebound such that the birds have more than enough to eat.
Are there specific brands of pesticides
gosh.
that you recommend people stay away from?
Do we really, is it okay to go down this road?
Probably not.
No, it's not,
Well,
because
no,
I would
not
say
brands, but
I would
are
say,
there specific
you know,
types of
Specific types.
Yeah.
Specific types would work, but
what's the
we
active
can't say
ingredient in Roundup?
DuPont.
See, that's the thing that
specific
could cause
types
trouble.
or class,
Yeah, classes of,
Yeah.
but it's really, you know, any kind of synthetic anything is
Well, so you
bad.
said that-
Yeah.
Tell
that-
Courtney.
Yeah.
All right.
So what I would ask or answered Courtney. So tell us about types of chemicals that are most harmful to the insect population.
The types of chemicals that are most harmful to the insect populations are going to be synthetic herbicides and pesticides. There are plenty of natural chemicals out there that are not so problematic, but the ones that are man-made oftentimes are very detrimental to not just the pests that they're aimed at, but other creatures in the ecosystem.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
There's somebody coming.
Are they coming our way?
They're coming this way. There is another trail on
I'd
the
ask
other
one more
side
Courtney.
over there.
What for somebody who's interested in going into this field, not just specifically bird banding, but bird preservation, what should they do?
Anybody that's interested in getting involved with wildlife as a career should think about going to a school like NC State that has a wildlife curriculum, specifically with coursework and experiences and independent studies that revolve around learning the techniques as well as the ID skills for working with wildlife. Also, I would say that if you're interested in doing that, or you're not sure if you're interested in doing that, the best thing to do is volunteer, because there are plenty of volunteer opportunities for the general public, for students who think they want to get involved with wildlife.
And last time, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Not that I can think of. You've done a good job hitting it.
Well, she can't say NC State. So. Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
Go.
One last time.
And quiet. Action. Okay. Good. We're rolling.
Yeah, sounds good.
You're just talking with Steven.
That's right.
Even though I'll be doing this, we're no longer here.
No one matters except for me.
Got it. I can do that.
And Billy, because I'm shooting like this, if you get on the Titanic, it's going to be tough to follow.
Got you.
Thank you.
Yes.
There we go.
I will try to prevent myself.
Use your hands if you want to talk. That's
Right.
great. That's cool.
For sure. And remember, we're just going
I'll
forward.
try to make my base here so I don't
You're
move
fine.
around
You're
too
fine.
much.
You're fine.
For sure. All right, so let's just start off with a couple basic details about you. Just got 3 things for you.
All right.
1, your name. 2, what's your position here at the park? And 3, how long have you been here?
So my name is Billy Hartness. I'm the park superintendent here at Weymouth Woods. I've been here this is my 2nd stint. So as a superintendent, I've been here for about 6 years, a little better. I was here as a park ranger for about 5 years, once before. So I enjoy this park a lot. So I was happy to get a chance to come back to it.
All right. Well, I mean, this is actually my first time here at the park, and I see why you love it. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Good place to be. I just wanted to hear, though, what do you love about Weymouth Woods? What drew you in?
Well, Weymouth has a long history with the park system. It was the park system's first natural area, which is why it has a little bit different name than you'll see associated with some other parks. It's Weymouth Woods, Sandhills Nature Preserve, instead of natural area or state park, or it doesn't say state in the name of it, that kind of thing. That's because it was the first one, and they didn't quite have it figured out what they were doing yet with the name. So it's, but yeah, that long, rich history, being an excellent place for natural resources and education, which are the two things that really attracted me to being a park ranger. Those are the things that I really love about it. When you get a little bit further into it, you know, it's the fire regime. Sorry.
Excellent.
We're rolling.
All right. So, what would you say makes Weymouth Woods unique compared to the other state parks that we have in North Carolina?
So Weymouth Woods is just like the prime example of a good fire regime that's been reintroduced by the state park system. This was kind of the first place where state parks got the ball rolling with prescribed fire. That started in 1970s and has been going pretty strong since. So we have a lot of these places, like you are looking out back behind me here, that have had a good burn history on them, which helps all of the species that are adapted to having fire in the ecosystem. So we've got a lot of those things still holding on here, and we're still trying to take care of them.
Very good. Very good. Do you have any other, things that, are particularly special about the park that you love, or are like, man, this is, you can't find this anywhere else?
So there are a few things about Weymouth that we really love. I would say the number one thing that you can't find anywhere else is the fact that we have old growth longleaf forest here. We have the largest contiguous tract north of Florida, I believe. It's right at 100 acres of old growth longleaf. We have the oldest known living longleaf pine anywhere is on the Boyd Tract, which is 470 something years old this year. We even throw a big birthday party for it every year. That's one of our big events in the park, and so it's one of the things that we're definitely proud of here. Having that old growth longleaf and having a place where people can still see what that looks like.
Very good. Very good. So now let's kind of transition over to birds in particular,
Okay.
since we've done a thing or two with them today. What do you think makes Weymouth Woods such a haven for birds?
Well, that history that we talked about, where we've been providing the fire that the landscape needs, which creates habitat for different flora and fauna, and that goes right along with the birds that exist here. A lot of people come from all over the world because this is an easy place to access some species that they can't find in other places. One of those being red cockaded woodpecker. Being in a state park, it's very inviting for the public to come, and they know that there's going to be people like us here to help them, try to find them. It's just a great resource for the public to have to find birds like that they're looking for. Also, we have Bachman sparrow, which is one that's real common for people to come here to look for because it likes the open pine savanna and nests on the ground in the tall grasses. Really unique bird that's not found in a lot of places, but they can find it here.
If you could just answer Stephen's question again about the red cockaded woodpecker, because you referred to a bird like that, but we might not necessarily have the part of your response where you mentioned the red cockaded woodpecker. So maybe you can re-ask the question, Stephen. And
And we're never going to hear Stephen. So when
Okay.
you say it,
Right.
we have a lot of birds at Weymouth or whatever, and then whatever you want to say.
Right.
That's all. That was good. It's good though.
so ask the question again.
Okay. So in particular with the red cockaded?
Yeah,
Sure.
because he talked about it being
Yeah.
special.
Sure, sounds good. So, of course, there are a lot of birds here, red cockaded woodpecker being kind of the star of the show in a way. Since it is a species that not that many people know about, could you describe and explain a little bit about the red cockaded woodpecker?
Sure. So red cockaded woodpeckers, or RCWs, is the lingo that we use to refer to them, are a federally endangered species. They are very intensively managed by the federal government. We have right now 6 active colonies on the park here at Weymouth Woods. They're a really special bird. They are a woodpecker that makes their nesting cavity inside of a live, usually longleaf pine. Occasionally they'll use other species, but for the most part they use longleaf. But they're the only woodpecker species that we have around here that uses a live tree. And they do that as part of their defense mechanisms. They build these cavities inside these trees, which takes years sometimes for them to excavate a cavity because the longleaf pine exudes sap whenever it's damaged. So they damage the tree a little bit, have to wait on the sap to dry, come back, rework it again, and they do that process over and over until they excavate a cavity into the inside part of the tree. And so that can take a while, which is how they become endangered. When European settlement come through and they started cutting down trees, they cut down a lot of trees that had cavities in them, and so the birds didn't have a place to nest or roost. And they couldn't just go build another nest like that. They had to excavate these cavities. So today, their numbers are actually recovering. They are increasing, which is a good thing. It means those management practices are working, and that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So, kind of going into, you're talking about, managing that species in particular. There's obviously a lot of different bird species here, some of which I'm sure face challenges. What are some of the challenges that the bird population faces here at Weymouth Woods and the Sandhills, the park in particular?
Yeah, so birds are, they're part of our ecosystem, part of our habitat, and like all things here, they are facing some challenges, and those are various and they change from point to point. Like it's a moving target, so to speak. Things like habitat degradation or destruction are number one, obviously. Invasive species are a big thing for a lot of species, maybe not as much for birds, but it is a challenge. Even in the places where we have what people might think is good land for wildlife, like they look out and they see woods and they say, well, there's open space that's natural, that looks like a good... If it's not maintained in the proper way, then a lot of the species that have adapted to living, particularly here in the sandhills, that's not good habitat for them. So when we're thinking about things like red cockaded woodpeckers or Bachman sparrow, they don't want or need the same habitat that necessarily a lot of other wildlife wants or needs. They have very particular needs that's based on fire, and so without fire, those things are going to go away. without fire, you don't have an open pine savanna ecosystem. So that's where our jobs come in, is to provide the correct habitat for those animals, or do our best to provide that for them.
Excellent. Let's take a little bit of a detour and away from birds for a second. I think you mentioned like fire management. You mentioned kind of the pine savannas. I've also heard of them called like pine barrens, as being something that Weymouth Woods obviously has quite a bit of. Most people have no clue what those are, and most people don't even understand what controlled burns are about. Could you explain a little bit about those different concepts to people?
Sure. So State Parks as an agency, our goal is to provide and manage habitats, not necessarily individual species. We figure if we take care of the habitat, then the habitat will take care of the species. So the way we do that with the coastal plain and the sand hills in particular is with fire. Those are very much fire maintained ecosystems, which means that longleaf pine trees are the dominant tree species, and it's also dominated by a lot of low growing vegetation, including things like wiregrass and lots of different wildflowers. So to make those the two dominant vegetations, you need a lot of disturbance, and in particular fire. All right, so fire does damage the longleaf pine trees, but they're very good at surviving it, way better suited for it than all the other species, so they outcompete all those other tree species. Wiregrass is actually directly fire dependent. It only produces seeds on the years that it gets burned. So it has to have fire in order to survive and thrive. So fire is a big part of what we do for maintaining this habitat. It won't exist without it.
Excellent. Sorry about kind of going off from birds and into that.
No.
I'll go ahead and take us.
I understand how this works. Y'all will get a bunch of clips and then piece it together for your story.
Right.
I'll answer everything I can for you.
Excellent. So we talked about, before this, a couple of the challenges that are facing birds, the habitat loss, invasive species, you name it, all these kinds of things. What's the park doing to try to kind of deal with these challenges to the species here, to birds in particular in the park?
Right. So as I mentioned before, parks is we very
Sorry, good. If you say, as I mentioned before, we may or may not use it. So.
right.
I apologize.
Gotcha.
I've been using it and I shouldn't.
We should have said. We
That-
should have
that's
told
okay.
you. Hang on one second, please. Okay.
All right. Now I'm trying to remember what question I was supposed to
Just
answer.
ask the question.
I can do it one more time.
All right.
And I won't say as I said before.
That's all right.
So there are quite a few challenges that are facing species here at the park, in particular birds. What's the park doing to try to kind of protect against those challenges to the bird species here?
So with state parks, we in particular, let me start over.
And there's no need to say so, because I'm going to have to cut it out.
Right.
Yeah, just
That's
You're good. You're good.
Giving us work to do.
Yeah.
North Carolina State Parks typically manages for habitat and not individual species. So we are not necessarily trying to manage for any particular bird or flower or tree. We want to manage that whole habitat so that everything that occurs inside of it is getting what it needs. But we do a lot of different kinds of management to try to combat some of those pressures that are put on all the species here. We do things like invasive plant and animal removal. Weymouth Woods is pretty lucky. We have a whole lot of plants that we need to remove, but we don't have a whole lot of invasive animal species that we need to remove. The only one that's a big challenge for us right now is fire ants, which may be a losing battle at this point, but we still are giving it the good fight right now. The one species that we have been concerned about with the fire ants are Bachman sparrows because they are a ground nesting species, and we did notice a dip in population of the Bachman sparrow as fire ants encroached into the park more and more. But it seems like that leveled off and our Bachman sparrow population seems to be increasing again now. So that's good news for us. But we do a lot of invasive plant removal. We get, because we're surrounded by neighborhoods and roads, and you know, everybody that walks into the park is walking from somewhere else, you know, they're from their own homes or through gardens and things like that that are surrounding the park. And often those places are loaded with seeds from plant species that we don't want. And then birds and things like that will bring them into the park as well, unwittingly that they are invasive species, of course. But so we have pressure from things like wisteria and autumn olive, tree of heaven, things like that, that we spend a lot of time, effort, and money trying to eliminate just because it degrades the habitat.
Awesome, thanks. All right. So, with these
Wipe
different
a little sweat
methods,
here.
you know, trying to remove different plants that don't belong here, and the seeds and just stuff like that that's going on, even, you know, the fires or whatever. Have you seen some of these methods to try to protect the birds? Have you seen results from them? Or what results have you seen from them, if any?
So I'm trying to think if for results directly related to birds. We don't like I keep emphasizing that we don't do management, you know, directly related to any one species. It's all about approaching a holistic habitat for us. Managing a particular species is much more of something like the federal government does, you know, whenever it becomes listed as endangered, because then they're solely focused on that. We don't have the funding or the, the staffing or anything else to do that kind of thing. So, so the number one result that I can give you that has helped birds in particular is our fire maintenance, our prescribed burning program. That is what this habitat needs. This habitat needs fire in order to thrive and survive. That helps the fauna, helps the flora, all the plants that grow here, which in turn helps all of the fauna, which is all the animal species, which includes birds like red-cockaded woodpeckers.
I have a question. How important is the park as an attraction for birds and people? Well, how important are birds for attracting people to the park? That's the question.
That is a good question. Let's go for it. So, how important is kind of the bird population, the reputation for bird watching here at Weymouth Woods, to attracting people to the park?
So Weymouth Woods is known worldwide as a birding hotspot. If you look on any particular list for birding places, you're typically going to find Weymouth Woods on there as a place for people to go and find birds like red-cockaded woodpeckers and Bachman sparrow. And we have people every year that come to do their yearly checklist for birding. They want to mark off some check boxes, so to speak. So they come here looking for particular birds. Some people are looking, this is a once in a lifetime trip for them to come to the East Coast of the United States. And so they're trying to get what they call lifer birds, birds that they haven't checked off that they've never seen before. And so it's a big deal for these people to be able to come and have a great place to access those birds. And so that was, sorry.
We're rolling.
All right.
All right, so we'll just keep it simple for the last one. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you would like the general public and the viewers to just hear about when it comes to Weymouth Woods, or bird conservation, or really just anything?
I think it's great for people to just find something that they enjoy and love and are passionate about in the outdoors, no matter what that is. If it's going hiking, going biking, canoeing, but birding is certainly a great option. It gives you something to focus on, to plan your trips around, something to get excited about. I'm going this place and I can see that bird. I can check that one off of my list. So birding is a great activity to do outdoors, and certainly with state parks. We have a lot of rangers out there who love birding and will provide some great information for people. Lost my train of thought, but
That's good.
I think that's wonderful. I think we
I
can.
think you got it.
Okay, Billy.
sorry. You want the mask off?
No, it's fine. That's fine. Nah.
However you feel most comfortable.
Yeah. That's good. All right, ready? Go. Good stuff. Okay. Hollywood. All right, do your thing. You drop them down. When I say go, I want you to look over to your right, and use your binoculars. Give me one more of those, please. Drop them down. Look over that. Look up top. No, look over this way.
Yep.
Up top. Sorry. Hang on. Wait for me, please. I'm sorry. The sun's going in and out on me. Here we go. Go. Look more to your right. Keep coming. I want you to stand right there. Look more to your right. Good. A little bit more. Now drop them down and keep looking that way and look through your binoculars. Drop them down. Look again, binoculars, and go to your left a little bit. Keep going. Good. Thank you.
All right.
And we are rolling.
Yay, perfect. All right. So first, I just want to start out before we dive into some of the details with just an overview. How can viewers?
Let's do the name and spelling.
Sure.
Name, spelling.
Never mind. Apologies. We can go with just what is your name, What do you do, and how long have you been here doing it?
Well, my name is John Davis. I am the owner of Wild Birds Unlimited in Southern Pines, North Carolina. And I've had this store now for just over 10 years. Actually, we're approaching our 11th anniversary. And I got into it sort of by accident, I guess you could say. I grew up with a love of birds thanks to my grandmother. And then I found this store as a customer in 2007. It turned my hobby around so dramatically, so significantly, that it made the hobby enjoyable. Whereas before I met the original owner, it was hit or miss in many respects. And he turned my hobby around, and then sadly in 2009 he told me that he was going to have to close the store due to health concerns. And I really panicked at that point. And so I contacted him and I said, listen, if there's any way, I'd be very interested in talking to you about purchasing the store, which we were able to do. And it's been an 11-year joyride since then. It's fantastic to be involved in something that you love so much.
And would you spell John for us, because there are different spellings of John?
Sure, it's Jon.
All right, thank you. That's awesome. Really good to hear. So first, let me just ask, like you in particular, what kind of got you into this hobby, into bird watching and protecting and just working for them?
Well, I think it goes back to when I was a child and I would visit my grandparents who lived out in the country in North Carolina, about 30 minutes from here, not too far from the North Carolina Zoo. And my grandmother fed the birds and I would go, and I was just fascinated because I hadn't really seen that kind of activity growing up. I actually grew up in New Jersey, and we didn't feed the birds. So when I came here, it was really an experience to see all of that color and life and activity. And I think the one bird that really triggered it for me was the hummingbirds. I never saw one until I came to North Carolina, and I was just enthralled by them. So I remember going outside and going up to the feeders, and my grandparents lived out in the country, so in the later summer months they might get dozens of hummingbirds, which is rare with a ruby-throated hummingbird, but it is possible. And so I had it in my head, I'm just going to stand there and wait for the birds to return. And I wore sunglasses so that they couldn't see my eyes, which is a predatory thing. If something's looking right at you, that could scare the birds away. So I wore sunglasses, I stood at the feeder a foot or two away and just waited for them to come back. And within minutes, they'd start returning. And after a few minutes, there'd be dozens of hummingbirds buzzing around your head. You could hear them squawking and chirping. You could hear the wing beats, the buzzing sounds of their wings. I could even feel the wind from their wings on my face. And to me, that was just so joyful to be that close to nature, something wild. And it was just amazing. And I was just inches away. Sometimes they'd stop and look at me and stare right at me and wonder what this thing was. Wasn't here earlier. And I think that was the genesis of my lifelong love affair with bird feeding. And then once I graduated college, I went into the Air Force. And everywhere I went, I would feed birds. And again, hit or miss. I didn't really know there was much to know about feeding birds. And I think I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And then Wild Birds Unlimited, the original owner, changed everything, turned my hobby into something that was much more enjoyable.
So let's talk about some rules. We'll never know if you say what I said earlier. We don't know if that'll actually make the.
Sure.
Okay. The other thing is we'll never hear Stephen.
Okay.
And so as we go, it's almost like, don't repeat the question like you asked you, but just the basis of it, of whatever it is that he asked you. Does that make sense?
Okay, sure.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, because some of the things that I just say, of course, the viewers won't hear because I will be invisible to them,
Okay.
of course.
Right.
But no worries, I appreciate it. It's an awesome answer.
Thank you.
So let's just move on a little bit then. So you have this passion, this hobby, which is incredible. What do you do to try to instill that in others? This idea of, how cool birds are and how they're worth protecting.
Well, I do give a lot of talks to try to excite people about feeding birds. A lot of garden clubs over the years have invited me. I like to give them some pointers, again, so that their hobby can be enjoyable. There is possibility of getting into a hobby and making a lot of mistakes, and maybe it's not as fun as you thought it would be, and you might give up. So one of my goals is to give people a few tips on how to make it easy, which is important, and enjoyable, and give them some knowledge about what makes things work and why.
All right, awesome. Appreciate it. So just when it comes to like taking care of birds and stuff, a lot of people don't know very much about it. Of course, there's a little bit of like I should do it, but they go in and maybe make some mistakes along the way because people don't know what birds actually need or want or anything like that. It's like just put out the seed or whatever, good to go.
All right.
Now I'd like to kind of like get into the ways that people can protect birds and take care of them effectively versus just going in and doing it and it kind of not leading anywhere.
Sure.
So could you give you can start off with one particular thing, just a different, like a pointer, a way that in general people can go about effectively taking care of birds.
Can you see that sign? Is it okay to point? No?
No.
No?
If you just talk here, then we'll shoot that.
Okay.
Shoot that.
All righty. I think the first thing that is important to learn if you're new to bird feeding or even if you've been bird feeding for a long time, the seed is the single most important thing that we could possibly do to improve our bird feeding experience. And not all seed is created equal. Unfortunately, a lot of mixes that you might find in certain big box stores, for example, or 50-pound bags of it, come with a lot of filler. And those fillers are often millet and milo. They're little round seeds. And the problem is songbirds don't really eat those two types of, they're actually grains. So they're not something our birds are going to want. They're not something they're going to seek out. And in many cases, you either get no bird activity at all, or you may find birds are dumping the seed prodigiously. Massive amounts of the seed is just being spit out as they look for something that they might possibly eat. And often those birds tend to be the younger birds that really haven't established a territory where they can get the better foods. So they're sort of at the mercy of what Mother Nature may offer in that particular area or what a feeder may offer. And so you'll find lots of seed on the ground, just piles and piles of it. And the sad thing with that is it grows weeds, so you have to deal with that. And then it may also draw in a lot of rodents. So you'll get mice and voles, field rats, rabbits, raccoons, deer, possums. You get in a lot of nighttime creatures that you probably really don't want to draw in. So if you feed the right type of seed without the millet and milo, just skip that altogether. Stick with things like fresh sunflower. Black oil sunflower is excellent. Safflower is another seed that a lot of birds do like, especially cardinals. Shelled foods is also critically important because not all birds that will come to our feeder can crack a sunflower. It's a pretty tough seed. And if you don't have the shelled food, you're not going to get those birds. And the best example that a lot of people love in the Carolinas is the bluebird, the eastern bluebird. His beak is designed for catching insects, not shelling seeds, like a cardinal, for example, can certainly bite through that seed very easily. So if you don't offer shelled foods, you're missing out on a significant number of birds that might come. And then lastly, you can up your game even more with some things like peanuts. Shelled peanuts are another excellent additive. And suet nuggets, little balls of suet, which are high in fat. All of these things, the more variety of food that you offer, the more variety of species you're likely to attract.
Very good. That's really, really awesome stuff.
That is great.
That's really, really good. Thank you.
That is great.
So I think we covered the seeds beautifully.
Yeah.
Beautifully, thank you.
Sure.
When it comes to just other things, obviously you are a wellspring of knowledge when it comes to what birds need and want. Through our phone calls, probably you can tell I'm not. So what would you tell someone like me? What other things can we do to help birds just in your yard, or if you're trying to attract them, or just take care of them a little bit better?
Absolutely. So other things that you might want to consider if you're trying to attract birds and making a yard a bird habitat. Water is another very important thing that you might be able to provide for them. Even if you live close to a large body of water like a lake or a pond, that's not necessarily something a songbird can utilize. Since they don't float like a duck or a goose, they really can't get into the water in most cases. So it's not something that can be thought of as a source of water for a little chickadee or a nuthatch. So having a little dish out there can be a huge advantage. Not to mention, not every bird that might be in the area will come to seed, but all birds need water. So you can also increase the variety of species that might be coming if you offer water. Other things that can be very critical is having a more natural habitat in the yard, possibly minimizing the size of the grass area in the yard, increasing the size of the native plants that we might be able to grow. There's a big push lately to really promote the native plants. For so long, non-native species have been introduced because they're attractive or pretty or easy to take care of. Sadly, though, a lot of animal species, from insects to birds and other mammals, really can't utilize the non-native species. If you don't have a plant that can support insect life, then the birds that rely on them to eat really can't make use of the area. So we've sterilized a lot of natural habitat, inadvertently, I'm sure, by putting too many non-native species out there. Another thing that natural plants and fall cleanup, for example, is an issue. If you don't clean up right away, trimming, pruning, raking the leaves and so forth, if you leave natural habitats, natural hidey holes, natural roosting places, seed supplies. Some plants open up when the weather gets cold. They're designed that way so that there's food in the wintertime. But if you trim all those things down and take them away and throw them to the curb, you're cutting out on a significant food supply for the birds. So keeping things as natural as possible, avoiding pesticides and herbicides, that's another huge problem that we've seen a decline in bug populations. Bees, of course, we've been talking about that for quite a while, and the latest theories are that it's the chemicals that we're applying everywhere that is causing the bee declines. And if we lose our pollinators, we lose our food sources, and potentially we lose us. So it's very important that we try to get more natural in the way we think about our backyards, our golf courses, our everything, landscaping and farming and so forth. The less chemicals we can get away with, the better off we'll all be.
Can you ask a question where he can relate what homeowners and residents can do to help increase the bird population, let's say at Weymouth?
That sounds good. I like that. So if didn't hear, I think what our next question is just like, how can residents, homeowners, people just in the area, us normal people, help to protect and grow the bird population just around, even in places like Weymouth Woods?
Absolutely. In order to try to increase the bird population at Weymouth Woods or anywhere, Weymouth is excellent because it's a little microcosm and a protected space, over 900 acres of undeveloped land, and birds, especially birds that would be their native habitat, like nuthatches and warblers and the red cockaded woodpecker. They all benefit from that area, but birds don't just stay there in those 900 protected acres. They can benefit from areas far and wide, especially along, if they're migratory, up and down the East Coast, for example. This is such a universal issue. It's not just something that would affect Weymouth Woods as those 915 acres. If we all start making slightly better decisions about what we do in our yards and plants and chemical applications, we can increase the bird populations everywhere. And Weymouth can't do it by themselves. That one little section is helpful, but it needs us, I think, everybody to contribute. The one thing that is another concern that we have to, I think, give some thought to is the insect populations have been declining dramatically over the last several decades. And the best example I can give for just a layman's term is when you would drive a car at night, your windshield used to be covered by insects, just a few miles, and you were getting covered, and you'd have to clean your windshields off fairly regularly. Now that doesn't really happen. I can go weeks without getting a bug strike on my window, and that's just one sign that things are in trouble. And if we don't do better, the whole food chain can start to collapse.
So I think you've done lots of great stuff. Why don't we move on to some show and tell with seeds that would be particularly good for and we saw.
Rolling.
All right. Well, okay. First off, let's go ahead and just kind of go through some of these seeds and kind of which ones have their pros, which have their cons, what to use, not to use. If you could just run through those, that would be great for folks who have no clue about it to begin with.
Absolutely. So we have a few different types of seeds here to show you. The first one is the most common type of seed you might find in a big box store. It has millet, milo, and a little bit of sunflower. And this is really not a very good bird feeding mix. In fact, it usually causes more problems than anything else. With the birds wasting time on a mix like this, they're not really getting the nutrition they need. They shouldn't need to have to pick through so much waste product in order to get to the sunflower. So a lot of the seed on the ground, you'll have millet and milo on the ground, growing weeds, drawing in rodents. And this is really not what we want. One step up from that, this is one of our most popular blends. It's called Choice. It has sunflower, naturally. It has safflower, which cardinals adore. It has shelled sunflower pieces and shelled peanut halves. So all of this mix gives the birds a variety because they don't always want exactly the same food. So by giving them something like this, you're offering them a choice and increasing the different species that may come to your yard. And then next, we have our most popular mix, which is called No Mess. It's essentially the same as the Choice, only completely shelled. So there is no sunflower shells to worry about because that does not get eaten and it will be dropped to the ground and you'll have piles and piles and piles of sunflower shells underneath your feeder. Now if it's on a deck, that's not necessarily a good thing. There's a lot to clean up. If it's in a garden or some other area where there's plants underneath the feeder, the sunflower shells as they decompose can cause natural toxicity of herbicide to be released into the soil, killing those plants. So there's a lot of reasons. I think this is our number one selling mix. It's an excellent mix and you don't have any waste. Every last bit of the seed will be eaten by somebody.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Excellent.
Question.
Rolling.
Okay, sounds good. So when it comes to these different bird seeds, of course, a lot of people have no clue where to start. When it comes to knowledge, it's very, very low. You have a lot of knowledge about that. So could you just run through? Are we probably gonna? Whatever, cats.
Can you take him?
You're very cute, but maybe not.
The video.
But now that he's out of the way, could we just maybe run through what makes some seeds better than others, and then even just the three there? What's the difference, and what should we steer toward?
Absolutely. This is a common mix that you might find in a big box store. It has what we call filler.
Let's start again. I'm really tight, and if you move it around, then we'll have a horn go off.
It's a good thing we started over.
As steady as you can hold it, and do use the other hand when you want to point.
Okay.
In fact, if you want to brace yourself on that, because I'm shooting. Yeah.
All right.
That'd be great.
Excellent.
So this seed
Hang on
is,
1 second, please. I'm sorry.
Sorry we're making it awkward on you, but
I'm slow.
yeah.
And anytime.
This is the kind of seed you will find often in big box store mixes. They are filled with fillers like millet and milo, and this is the type of seed that songbirds are not looking for. It's really, actually, it's a grain, and songbirds are not natively going to be eating these types of seeds. So the millet and milo really is a waste, and the birds will tend to dump it all on the ground, which can cause other problems. It can cause the weeds to grow, and you also have mammals that will be attracted to that much seed down there. So mice and voles, rats, rabbits, raccoons, deer, possums. So it's really something we would tend to want to avoid. There's a few sunflower seeds in here, but really not that many, and that would be the key to a good high quality mix. One of our most popular mixes is the choice mix. And here you'll see none of the millet and milo. It has sunflower, it has safflower, which cardinals adore. It has shelled sunflower pieces, so some birds really don't have the strong enough beaks to crack open a sunflower. In particular, around here, a bluebird is a great example. They're primarily insect eaters, so their beaks aren't designed to break open the hard shell. So if you don't have something they can get to, they won't come to your feeders. So shelled sunflower as well as peanut pieces, which is another excellent additive to have in any mix. Believe it or not, a lot of birds love peanuts. So the basic idea is the more variety of good, fresh, high-quality seeds you get, the more variety of species of birds you will attract.
John, could you do that again? Because I think the first time I didn't see your fingers on your left hand, like all the way under the, yeah, that's how you held it the first time.
Okay.
So if you could just do that over again,
Okay.
starting by picking it up and putting it in there and hold it the way you just
All right,
did.
I'll just
Apologies.
put that down. So this is one of our most popular, I'm sorry, let me try that again.
Is it a test for me to figure out where you're ready?
This is one of our most popular
Let's
mixes.
do it again. I need to see where you go. Okay, go.
This is one of our most popular mixes. It's our choice mix, and it has sunflower, shelled sunflower, it has safflower, which cardinals adore, and it has shelled peanuts. So there's a little bit of a variety for every bird really that would come to a feeder. You're giving them a mix, you're giving them options. By having shelled foods in there, you can also attract birds that normally wouldn't come to a feeder with just sunflower. Bluebirds are an excellent example of that. Their beaks are designed for catching bugs, so they don't have the strength to break open a hard black oil sunflower shell. So if you have shelled sunflower, have shelled peanuts, you're going to offer them a lot of different options. And just the more variety of foods that you offer, the more variety and more varied the species of birds you can attract.
On this one, I think you picked up a sunflower seed shell, saying how hard it was. So can you do that?
Okay.
Well, as you talk about, there's some birds that don't have a strong enough beak to break the shell.
Do you want me to start from the beginning?
No, you could just pick up there.
So some birds don't have a strong enough beak to crack open the hard shell of the
Okay.
black whale sunflower.
Put it back. Wait, if you're doing this, I
Oh.
can't. I'm trying to focus.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you could kind of just hold the shell just
Okay.
right where it is.
Yeah, I can see where I am, so you
Yeah.
just hold it like that. All right, anytime.
So some birds just don't have a strong enough beak to crack open the sunflower shell. It's just too tough. So if we don't offer a shelled food, then they won't be able to eat from your feeders.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
And then tell John when you're ready for the next
Yeah,
one.
go. Sorry.
And then one of our most popular mixes is called the no mess. It's very similar to the choice mix, and it has the variety of foods. It has sunflower, peanuts, and tree nuts, but it's all shelled. So there's nothing to create a mess under your feeder. There's no debris. There's no black shells that don't get eaten by anything. On a deck, it can cause a lot of problems. You have to keep it clean. And in a garden area, your shells, as they decompose, as they rot, can kill other plant species. It's a sort of a natural defense the sunflower has to try to outcompete other plants. So as they decompose, you might end up killing a flower bed or some other area with plants. So the no mess is our most popular mix because, again, like it says, there's no mess. Everything in it will be eaten.
And while you're holding it there, can you just kind of point with your right index finger to some of the different types of seeds that are right in there?
Okay, let me
And talk about it as you point to them.
see if I can find some nuts. There's the peanuts, but we also usually have tree nuts in here, which I might not have got a good sample of. I can go grab some, make sure let me grab some nuts. Sorry.
So each seed that's different, and just say a word about it, not a lot.
Okay.
So this is our no mess, and it's very similar to the choice, but no shells. So it's predominantly sunflower, shelled sunflower. There's also peanut halves, and then there's also some tree nuts mixed in. So you're getting a nice variety, but no shells, no debris underneath your feeders.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Yay.
Okay.
Those need to collapse.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
These guys.
Oh gosh, keep that one tight on the bottom. Don't loosen them. Perfect. Thanks guys for doing it. You're in the shot, young man.
Can I have some of that, like, crack cocaine for the birds?
Oh, you're filming. I'm sorry. I didn't know you were.
Okay, so just give me the spreadable stuff.
Okay, and that's tricky too, because they have to find it. You can put it on a tree where it's.
No, I've used it before.
Okay. Are they slowing down?
Oh, yes, tremendously.
Okay.
Talk to a few local bird experts. So I guess you talked to Susan Campbell?
Well, good.
Yes.
Susan and Park Superintendent and John.
Nice.
There we go.
But it's easier just not to have to worry about it.
For sure. Question. My mom always gets supreme. Is that a good one?
Well, the only thing it's missing, to be fair, is the peanuts over the
Okay.
choice.
Which we learned is a pretty big deal.
Peanut is, I call it, people get worried that if
for
they
10
have
seconds.
peanuts, then they're going to have more squirrels.
Right.
But people with Supreme have plenty of squirrels.
We have plenty of squirrels.
The
Don't worry.
lack or presence of peanuts doesn't change. Yeah, and it's only a few bucks more.
Right, that's not
peanut-
much.
Peanut costs, but the benefits aren't valuable.
Yeah, because my dad.
Because there's 5 pounds of shells.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, exactly, because they don't eat the shells.
Right.
Anything else?
So you
store.
get more
We do the
food.
store.
So price
So what do you have?
Really, in that case, it's really interesting.
Oh, to be in every shot.
I swear, you guys are here now.
Do we ask John to walk behind
Are you
the
trying to steal
counter?
my
That would be great.
Hey,
I
John.
think I am.
Hold it 1 second, John.
rolling.
When we're ready, you rolling? If you could just kind of go around and then get in front of behind the counter.
With my mask on?
Mask on's great. You're being safe. There you go. Just be looking at some stuff. Whatever the stuff you need to look at. There you go. Just do that, yeah. Just straighten up a display or something. I hear a cat. There's our bird sounds. What you're doing is great. Just keep doing it, please. Do something up top. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, you just keep doing the same thing, but this is only going to last for a few seconds. There you go. What you're doing is fine. Just stay with that. Thanks. Yeah, just continue with that one. Continue with what you were just doing.
Sorry.
Thank you. Perfect.
All right.
See the next- We're good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we'll just start out in here with just kind of a question about Weymouth Woods in particular.
Mhm.
What do you love about this place?
Well, the thing that really attracts me to Weymouth Woods is its uniqueness and diversity, all in one fairly concise, 900-acre tract. There's a lot of different areas around here. You've got the pine barrens, they used to call it there. We've got wetlands and marshy areas. The pinelands don't have as much low growth, which is how it should be. Other areas, as you see back here, do. And it just offers so much diversity in a very short walk. You get to take in quite a bit of different ecosystems. And if you walk through here and look, the amazing things you can find down low. Without even trying, a couple months back, I saw maybe 50 different types of mushrooms. Many of them are just beautiful to look at. So many different bird species. Some you won't see in your backyard environment because that's not their natural area. They like to be out a little bit more away from people, which this area provides. There's salamanders and frogs and turtles and yes, snakes, but they generally stay away from us. There's just so much diversity here. This preserve is just wonderful to get in touch with nature.
Let's pause 1 second.
Excellent.
Go to your left.
Short answers are perfect.
It's perfect.
Yep.
We're rolling.
All right. So we got Weymouth covered. Now I'd like to ask you about just birding and birds in particular. What do you love about them? What do you love about studying birds?
Well, the thing that I love most about birds, especially for me and what my hobby is backyard bird feeding. Now, I enjoy seeing the natural side of things as well, but unfortunately, that doesn't come as often just because I'm busy. You know, I love to go to the mountains, I love to go to the ocean, I love to come here, but there's not always time to do all of those things on a regular basis. So the nice thing about feeding birds in the backyard is you get to be in touch with nature on a daily basis. You get to see the life and the color and the activity, and especially, you know, when you watch parents feeding their young and how they beg for food and how they learn to be adults. And you can see all this process going on right in your backyard. And I think that's one of the very special things about bird feeding. I should also point out, I know some people sometimes are concerned that if we feed birds, we take away their ability to find food for themselves. And that can be somewhat true for certain mammal species. We can get them off of their natural diets. But birds will always fall back on natural food. Number one, always want natural food. In fact, when they come to our feeders, they need our food. It's not just so much that they're lazy. Squirrels maybe, they might sit at your feeder underneath a tree full of acorns, but birds will always choose natural food. So when we see them in our feeders, it's because there's not enough food out in nature at that time of the year for everybody that's trying to get the same foods.
Sorry, guys. And we are rolling.
We're rolling. All right. So in Weymouth, and just in the Sandhills in general, you know a lot about the bird populations. Of course, you've been around them a lot. What are some of the things that you can find really commonly around here?
Well, there's two ways to answer that. In the Sandhills in general, in a suburban situation, we have the usual suspects, I like to say. I mean, you'll certainly see cardinals and chickadees and nuthatches and titmice and bluebirds and blue jays and cardinals, um, mockingbirds. There's a lot of the normal suspects, wrens. Here, you're going to see a little bit different variety if depending on what time of the year you come, because many of the birds that might find Weymouth Woods inviting is because it's so natural and so secluded, and there's not really a lot of human presence here. So of course we've got the red-cockaded woodpecker, which Weymouth Woods is somewhat famous for having several colonies. But they also have several species of warblers, a Bachman sparrow, ruby-crowned kinglets. I've been here during migration when cedar waxwings have come through, which are absolutely stunning and beautiful birds, but they're primarily berry eaters. They come in big groups, big flocks, often seen with robins. So they migrate through here, and this is a great stopping point along their journey. I like to think of it in human terms. If you're driving I-95 from Florida to Maine and you've got your favorite rest stop or town that you visit that's a great break, that you like to take a break before you continue your long journey. And this is kind of like that. It's an excellent place for birds to stop and replenish their energy and eat.
Pretty good. All right, we can keep going for now. Excellent. So obviously, bird populations have been going down in general. They've been on the decline, which obviously can raise some alarms whenever we see that kind of shift happening. What could be contributing factors to that?
So yes, studies have shown that bird populations have decreased somewhat alarmingly in the last several decades. Some 30% of bird species, or birds in general, are gone. And the biggest contributor to that would be loss of habitat and adequate supplies of the appropriate food for that particular species of birds. And undeveloped protected areas like Weymouth Woods go a long way to helping certain bird species, but because not all birds just live here and they move through, we need to be more concerned, of course, with all the areas that birds go to. So if it is just housing and suburbia, even cities can get involved in this, is again, the right plants, native species. Providing the food that we do is not something that hurts the birds in any way. Studies have shown that it gives a lot of species who are struggling an extra hand, a little leg up on survival, because the habitat destruction and loss of natural food sources has been so prevalent. Our feeding doesn't discourage the birds from finding their own food. It just helps them when food isn't plentiful enough. And they will do the right thing. They will always choose natural foods. So what we can do, plant the right plants, the native plants, provide food, good food, high quality food that matches their natural diets. Another thing that's important to think about when getting food is the age of the seed is also a contributing factor. Even if it's a good food for them like sunflower, if it's a year old, it might not be that good. And they may end up dumping a lot of that seed trying to find something edible. And the bad things that can happen to old seeds is they can dry out, so there's really not as much life left to them, kind of dusty. Or the oils in the seeds and nuts can turn rancid. And then again, that's not something the birds are going to want, because if they're doing their own thing, they're eating the freshest foods there is.
Your answers are fantastic.
All right. So one final thing. Why does it matter protecting birds? Why should people get involved in it?
Well, I think protecting birds is not a difficult thing for us to undertake. Birds can contribute so much to the ecological nature of any environment. They eat a lot of insects. They spread seeds, which causes plants to grow further and faster and farther than they would normally. So they have an important role in the ecosystem. And so much of that has been depressed lately that if we can do anything to help them out, I think we should.
Is that it?
Yay! And then just
your
finally,
very last
Oh,
question.
there's another one.
yes,
One more, very last.
one last.
Okay.
And it's really, what did I overlook? Is there anything that you would like to add that you think people should hear about?
That's a good question. So a few other points that I'd like to make that we can do to help birds is window strikes are another big factor. If you can do anything to break up a reflection, if you have large windows, that helps a lot, especially during migration. Give the birds a fighting chance. And there's a lot of ways we can break up a reflection on a big pane glass window. Another thing that we would encourage is people keeping their cats inside. Cats are responsible for approximately 500 million bird deaths a year. And aside from habitat loss, that's the #1 cause of bird deaths. And that's an easy thing to do. Just keep your cats inside.
Very good. Thank you. That's awesome.
Okay, anytime. All right, let's do it again. Anytime. Take your hands out and be looking them over. Just keep doing it because you can see if it's good. Take your hands away. Good.
Tilts off here. Work.
Okay.